The doors are locked. What's happening?
I'm afraid the wedding is canceled.
The first thing I saw on my wedding day was 200 confused guests standing in a silent parking lot where a ballroom should have been. No music. No flowers. No tables. Just wind scraping across bare asphalt and the stunned whispers of people who had traveled across the country to celebrate a wedding that no longer seemed to exist. My fiancé Daniel stood beside me, his hand tightening slowly around mine. I could feel the tension running through his fingers, the unspoken question forming in his mind. Where was everything? The catering trucks were gone. The floral arch we had chosen together was nowhere to be seen. Even the elegant glass doors of the venue had been locked, dark, and lifeless, as if the building itself had forgotten our names. And then my mother stepped out of a black sedan across the street. Margaret Hale wore a pearl suit and a satisfied smile that didn't belong at a wedding. She crossed the pavement with slow, deliberate steps, as if she had been waiting her entire life for this exact moment. When she reached us, she tilted her head and said softly, loud enough for half the guests to hear. "I warned you, Emily. A marriage built on lies never lasts." Around us, the whispers grew louder. But what my mother didn't know was that someone else had been watching her for 6 months. And the place she thought she had destroyed was about to become the stage for the biggest mistake of her life. 8 months earlier, everything had felt different. It was a quiet Thursday evening in our small kitchen in Portland. Rain tapped gently against the windows while the smell of roasted garlic filled the air. I was still wearing my work cardigan, my hair loosely tied, completely unprepared for what Daniel did next. He set down his glass of wine, walked toward me, and dropped to one knee. For a moment I thought he was joking. Then he opened the small velvet box. The diamond caught the kitchen light like a tiny star. "Emily Carter," he said, his voice shaking just enough to make my chest tighten, "will you marry me?" My hands flew to my mouth. Tears came instantly, the kind that arrive before your brain has time to understand why. "Yes," I whispered. Then louder. "Yes." Daniel laughed, standing up and pulling me into his arms. We spun clumsily across the kitchen floor, knocking into a chair, both of us laughing like teenagers. For 10 perfect minutes, the world felt simple. Then my phone rang. I didn't even have to look at the screen to know who it was. My mother had a strange talent for sensing when my happiness appeared. "Hi, Mom," I answered, trying to keep the excitement in my voice. Silence stretched across the line. Then came the slow inhale I had heard my entire life. "You got engaged," she said flatly. It wasn't a question. "How did you, Emily?" she interrupted. "Tell me you didn't say yes already." Daniel raised an eyebrow across the kitchen, silently asking who it was. I mouthed the word Mom, and he sighed. "I did," I said carefully. Another silence. Then a small laugh that felt like ice sliding down my spine. "Oh sweetheart," Margaret said softly. "That poor man has no idea what he's getting into." My fingers tightened around the phone. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means," she replied calmly, "Daniel Brooks is making the biggest mistake of his life." Across the room Daniel was opening the refrigerator, unaware that my mother had already declared our future a disaster. "She barely holds a stable job," my mother continued, her voice sharpening. "She jumps from project to project, always chasing some new idea. Marriage requires stability. Responsibility." I felt heat rising in my face. What she didn't say out loud was what she had been implying for years. "Emily isn't enough." I looked at Daniel laughing quietly as he searched for leftover cake. He had never asked how much money I made. Never questioned my unpredictable work schedule. Never cared that my career in event logistics meant odd hours and constant travel. To him, I was capable. To my mother, I was always a disappointment. "Mom," I said slowly, forcing calm into my voice, "you don't know Daniel." "I know men," she replied. And then she added the sentence that should have warned me everything was about to change. Some mistakes, Margaret said quietly, a mother simply cannot allow her daughter to make. The call ended a few seconds later. I stood in the kitchen staring at the dark phone screen, an uneasy feeling creeping across my chest. Daniel walked over and kissed my forehead. "Let me guess," he said gently. "She's not thrilled." I forced a smile. "She'll come around." At the time, I believed it. What I didn't know was that my mother had already started making phone calls that very night. And 6 months before our wedding day, my maid of honor Sophia Lynn heard one of those calls. Instead of stopping it, she did something far more dangerous. She started preparing a trap. The first warning arrived 3 weeks after my engagement. It didn't come from my mother. It came from my best friend. Sophia Lynn stood in the doorway of my apartment one cold Sunday morning, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing an expression I had never seen on her face before. Sophia was many things. Brilliant. Strategic. Calm in every situation. During the 10 years I had known her, she had handled corporate negotiations worth millions of dollars without raising her voice once. But that morning, something about her was different. Her eyes were sharper. Quieter. Calculating. "Tell me something," she said as she stepped inside. "Sure," I replied, still half asleep. She handed me the coffee and studied my face for a long moment. "Has your mother contacted any of your wedding vendors?" The question hit me like a small stone in still water. "Why would she?" I laughed lightly. "She's not planning the wedding." Sophia didn't laugh. Instead, she walked to the kitchen table and placed her phone down slowly. "I had dinner with a client last night," she said. I sat across from her, suddenly alert. "And?" "He owns the catering company you booked." My stomach tightened. "What about it?" Sophia's voice dropped lower. "He asked if everything was okay with your family." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "He said your mother called him 2 weeks ago." The room went completely quiet. "She told him the wedding might be cancelled," Sophia continued. "Said there were serious financial concerns. She suggested he prepare for a contract withdrawal." My fingers froze around the coffee cup. "That doesn't make any sense," I said slowly. "She wouldn't do that." Sophia didn't answer immediately. She simply watched me. "Emily," she said gently, "has your mother ever approved of any decision you've made?" The question felt unfair. But also painfully accurate. "She's just protective," I insisted. Sophia leaned back in the chair, studying me like a puzzle she had already solved. "Protective people don't sabotage weddings." My heartbeat started to quicken. "She didn't sabotage anything," I said. "Maybe she was just asking questions." "Maybe," Sophia said calmly. But her tone made it clear she didn't believe that for a second. Then she turned her phone toward me. On the screen was a short audio file. "I wasn't going to show you this yet," she said quietly. "But I think you need to hear it." My throat felt dry. "Where did you get that?" "From someone who didn't realize their office phone automatically records calls." She pressed play. My mother's voice filled the kitchen. Smooth. Polite. Charming. "Hello, this is Margaret Hale. I'm calling about my daughter Emily Carter's wedding reservation in October." My heart started pounding harder. The caterer's voice followed. Friendly. Professional. "Yes, Mrs. Hale. Everything is confirmed." A small pause. Then my mother spoke again. "I'm afraid there may be a misunderstanding," she said. Her tone was gentle. Concerned. Perfectly convincing. "My daughter is going through a difficult financial situation. She's been struggling lately. I don't believe she can honor the payment schedule." The words felt like ice sliding down my spine. "That's not true," I whispered. On the recording, the caterer sounded surprised. "Oh, we haven't heard anything like that." Well, my mother continued smoothly, Emily is embarrassed about it. I'm trying to protect her from public humiliation. Sophia paused the recording. The silence in the apartment became suffocating. She's trying to cancel my wedding, I said. Not exactly, Sophia replied. I looked at her. She's creating doubt, Sophia explained. If enough vendors think the wedding might collapse financially, they'll start pulling out on their own. My chest tightened. Why would she do that? Sophia's eyes softened slightly. Because she thinks Daniel is a mistake. The words echoed in my mind. Some mistakes a mother cannot allow. I suddenly felt cold. What do I do? I asked quietly. Sophia leaned forward, her elbows resting on the table. For a moment she didn't answer. Then a slow smile appeared on her face. Not comforting. Strategic. We let her continue, she said. My head snapped up. What? If we confront her now, Sophia explained, she'll deny everything and stop using traceable methods. That's insane, I said. No, Sophia replied calmly. It's effective. She tapped the phone screen again. Your mother believes she's the smartest person in the room. I swallowed. She usually is. Sophia's smile widened. Slightly. Then let's give her a bigger room. A chill ran through me. What are you planning? She leaned back in the chair, crossing her arms. A stage. I frowned. For what? Sophia's voice dropped almost to a whisper. For her to expose herself. Outside the apartment window, the rain had started again, tapping softly against the glass. Inside, my life was quietly shifting in a direction I didn't yet understand. What if she actually ruins the wedding? I asked. Sophia tilted her head. She might. That's not comforting. But it will reveal something important, she said. What? Sophia looked directly into my eyes. The real reason she's doing this. I hesitated. You think it's not about Daniel? No, Sophia said quietly. Her voice carried a certainty that made my skin prickle. This is about power. A long silence filled the kitchen. Finally I exhaled. So what's the plan? Sophia picked up her coffee and took a slow sip. We watch, she said. And we collect everything. My stomach twisted. Everything? Her eyes glinted. Every phone call. Every email. Every lie. I rubbed my temples. This feels like a spy movie. Sophia stood up and walked toward the window. When she spoke again, her voice carried a strange calm. Emily, she said softly, your mother just started a war. She turned back toward me. And the biggest mistake she's about to make, her smile sharpened, is thinking you're defenseless. 3 months before the wedding, the first vendor canceled. The email arrived at 6:15 in the morning. I was still in bed when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Half awake, I reached for it, expecting a work message or a calendar reminder. Instead I saw the subject line. Wedding contract termination notice. For a moment I simply stared at the screen, trying to convince myself I had misread it. Then I opened the message. The florist wrote politely, almost apologetically. Due to concerns regarding payment security and contract stability, their company regrettably needed to withdraw from the event. My chest tightened. This was the same florist who had hugged me after our first consultation, promising she would create the most beautiful autumn arch Portland had ever seen. Now she was gone. I sat up slowly in bed. Daniel stirred beside me. What's wrong? I handed him the phone. He read the email once. Then again. His jaw tightened. Did your mom contact them too? I don't know, I whispered. But deep down, I already knew. Daniel sat quietly for a moment, thinking. He wasn't an emotional reactor. Daniel Brooks built technology companies for a living. His brain moved through problems like a chess player analyzing the board. But this time something darker passed through his eyes. "This isn't coincidence," he said. I nodded slowly. Across the room, the morning light was creeping through the curtains, soft and peaceful, completely disconnected from the storm building inside my chest. "She's not just questioning the wedding anymore," Daniel continued. "She's actively dismantling it." The words made my stomach twist. "Maybe we should confront her," I said. Daniel looked at me carefully. Would she admit it? No. We both knew the answer. A few hours later, Sophia arrived at the apartment again. I didn't even need to explain. She had already seen the florist's cancellation notice forwarded to her email. "That was faster than I expected," she said calmly as she walked into the living room. "Faster?" Daniel repeated. Sophia nodded. "I thought she'd wait longer before escalating." I sank onto the couch. "This is escalating?" Sophia opened her laptop and placed it on the coffee table. The screen filled with a growing list of documents. Emails. Vendor contracts. Call logs. Evidence. "You've been collecting all of this?" Daniel asked. "For weeks," she replied. I stared at the screen. "How many vendors has she contacted?" Sophia hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then she answered. 8. The word hit the room like thunder. Daniel leaned back slowly. "There are only 12 vendors total," he said. "Correct. So she's trying to collapse the entire event." "Yes." My pulse pounded in my ears. "Why?" I asked again, my voice cracking slightly. Sophia closed the laptop. "Because she believes she can control the outcome." Daniel frowned. "That still doesn't explain something." "What?" Sophia asked. "She's wealthy," Daniel said. "If Margaret Hale truly believed Emily was making a mistake, the easiest solution would be bribery. She could offer vendors more money to walk away." Sophia's eyes lit with interest. "Exactly." I looked between them, confused. "So why isn't she doing that?" Sophia leaned forward. "Because she doesn't want the wedding to quietly disappear." Daniel's expression sharpened. "She wants it to fail publicly." The realization landed heavily in my chest. My mother wasn't just trying to stop the wedding. She wanted humiliation. Guests arriving to chaos. Contracts collapsing. A spectacle. I felt suddenly cold. "She wants everyone to think I ruined my own wedding," I whispered. Sophia nodded slowly. "Financial irresponsibility. Poor planning. Emotional instability." Daniel looked at me, anger flashing in his eyes. "She's trying to destroy your reputation." Silence filled the room. For most of my life, my mother had controlled every narrative about me. Emily is talented but unreliable. Emily has potential but lacks discipline. Emily dreams too big. But this time something inside me shifted. I straightened slightly. "She thinks I can't handle pressure," I said quietly. Sophia tilted her head. "Can you?" Daniel smiled faintly. "I think we both know the answer." My career in event logistics had taught me something important. Disasters happen. Power outages. Vendor bankruptcies. Storms. And sometimes something worse. Sabotage. But real planners never panic. They adapt. I stood up slowly. "Okay," I said. Sophia raised an eyebrow. "Okay?" "If she wants the wedding to collapse publicly," I continued, "then we let her think she's winning." Daniel watched me carefully. "And then?" I looked at Sophia. "And then we move the entire wedding." Sophia's smile returned. This time it was slow and dangerous. "Now you're thinking like a strategist." Daniel crossed his arms. "How exactly do you hide a 200-person wedding relocation?" Sophia and I exchanged a glance. There's one advantage, she said. What's that? She tapped the stack of contracts on the table. Your mother believes she already knows every vendor involved. Daniel's eyes widened slightly. You're going to replace them. Not replace, Sophia corrected. Upgrade. I frowned. Upgrade? Sophia turned the laptop toward us again. A new list appeared on the screen. Names I didn't recognize. Private event coordinators. Exclusive venues. Luxury catering groups. These vendors operate differently, she explained. They handle confidential corporate events. Celebrity gatherings. Political fundraisers. Daniel leaned forward. And they're used to secrecy. Sophia nodded. Extreme secrecy. A strange thrill moved through me. For the first time since this nightmare began, hope flickered in my chest. We rebuild the wedding behind the curtain, Sophia said. And when my mother pulls the final thread, I added slowly, understanding forming in my mind. The stage will already be set. Daniel looked between us. And Margaret? Sophia's voice dropped. We let her believe she destroyed everything. Outside the window, clouds drifted slowly across the afternoon sky. Somewhere in the city, my mother was probably making another phone call, another careful lie, another quiet move in the game she believed she controlled. What she didn't realize was that the board had already changed. And on the day of the wedding, the moment she thought she had finally won, she would be standing in the center of a trap she built herself. 1 week before the wedding, my mother believed she had already won. By then, almost every original vendor had withdrawn. The florist was gone. The musicians cancelled. The catering company sent a final notice confirming contract termination due to financial uncertainty. Each email arrived with polite regret. Each one carried the same invisible fingerprint. Margaret Hale. From the outside, the situation looked catastrophic. Friends started calling with careful voices, asking if the wedding date was still happening. Some relatives offered sympathy. Others offered quiet judgment. One aunt even asked if Daniel and I had secretly broken up. I let the rumor spread. Because that was exactly what my mother expected. On a cold Tuesday afternoon, she invited me to lunch. The restaurant was one of her favorites, a quiet place overlooking the river where every table carried white roses and expensive crystal glasses. She arrived 15 minutes early. Margaret always liked to control the timing of conversations. When I walked in, she studied my face carefully, searching for signs of panic. I gave her none. Emily, she said smoothly as I sat down. Mom. A waiter poured water. Neither of us touched it. For a few seconds we simply watched each other. Then she leaned forward slightly. I heard about the florist. Her voice carried just enough sympathy to sound convincing. Word travels fast, I replied. Margaret sighed softly. This is exactly what I feared would happen. I tilted my head. What do you mean? She clasped her hands together on the table. Weddings require stability, organization, financial discipline. There it was. The familiar lecture. I tried to warn you, she continued. Planning something this large without proper support can lead to embarrassing outcomes. Embarrassing. The word hung in the air like a blade. I forced a small, tired smile. You might be right. Her eyes flickered with satisfaction. And Daniel? She asked. He's stressed. That part wasn't a lie. Daniel had spent the last 2 weeks coordinating secret contracts with the new vendors Sophia found. The level of confidentiality required had been extraordinary. Private agreements. Temporary shell companies. Non-disclosure clauses. Every piece of the new wedding existed behind a wall of legal silence. Even the new venue had a code name in the documents. Project Autumn Light. But my mother knew none of this. She only saw collapse. I worry about you, Margaret said gently. I almost laughed. You don't need to worry. She leaned closer. Emily, listen to me carefully. Her voice dropped to a confidential whisper. It's not too late to postpone the wedding. There it was. The real objective. Not cancellation. Control. If you delay the ceremony, she continued, you can rebuild everything properly. I could help you find reliable planners. Reliable. Meaning obedient. Meaning under her supervision. For a moment I imagined telling her the truth. That the wedding had already been rebuilt. That every vendor she had pushed away had been replaced with companies far beyond her reach. That the new venue alone cost more than the entire original event. But instead I lowered my eyes slightly. I'll think about it, I said quietly. Margaret leaned back, completely satisfied. Across the restaurant window, sunlight reflected off the river like scattered glass. She believed she had saved me from myself. What she didn't know was that 3 miles away, Sophia was finalizing the last piece of the plan. That evening we met inside the new venue for the first time. Daniel arrived first. I watched his expression change the moment he stepped into the ballroom. Wow, he whispered. The space was enormous. Tall windows stretched across the entire wall, revealing a sweeping view of the city skyline. Chandeliers hung like constellations above polished marble floors. This place hosts international summits, Daniel said. Exactly, Sophia replied. She walked beside us, reviewing details on her tablet. Your mother spent months dismantling the original wedding. I ran my hand across one of the marble tables. And now? Sophia looked up. Now we build something she could never imagine. Staff members moved quietly through the room, assembling lighting rigs and floral installations that dwarfed the decorations we originally planned. Everything felt bigger. Stronger. Untouchable. Daniel turned toward Sophia. Has she tried contacting any of the new vendors? Sophia shook her head. She can't. Why not? Because none of the contracts exist under Emily's name. Daniel frowned. Then whose name? Sophia. Looked at me. A slow smile spread across my face. Mine, Daniel realized suddenly. But that wasn't the twist. Sophia shook her head again. Not Daniel's. They both looked at me now. I reached into my bag and placed a document on the table. The company registration certificate. Emily Carter. Founder and owner. Carter Strategic Events. Daniel blinked. You started a company? 2 years ago. His expression shifted from confusion to amazement. You never told me. I never needed to. Sophia crossed her arms with satisfaction. Emily has been running large-scale corporate events for international clients for years. Daniel stared at me. You planned conferences for governments. And technology summits, I added quietly. The same woman my mother believed was financially unstable had been managing events worth tens of millions of dollars. I simply never told Margaret. Because she never asked. Daniel laughed softly, shaking his head. She thinks you can't even organize a wedding. I looked around the massive ballroom. Rows of tables. Lighting grids. Coordinated staff. The kind of operation that required military precision. Let her think that, I said. Sophia's voice cut gently through the room. She will. Then she checked the final line on her tablet. Because on Saturday morning, when Margaret Hale arrives at the empty venue she helped destroy, Daniel finished the sentence quietly. She'll believe the wedding has collapsed. I looked toward the glowing skyline beyond the windows. And for the first time since this battle began, I allowed myself to imagine that moment. The silence. The confusion. The shock. Then I spoke the last piece of the truth neither of them had said yet. And when she finally realizes what's really happening, my voice softened. It will already be too late. The morning of the wedding began in silence. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy kind. The kind that spreads through a crowd when something has clearly gone wrong. At 9 o'clock, guests began arriving at the original venue. The same building my mother had carefully dismantled piece by piece over the past several months. They stepped out of taxis and rental cars wearing elegant suits and formal dresses. Some carried small wrapped gifts. Others held cameras, already smiling in anticipation. Then they noticed the parking lot. Empty. No music. No flowers. No welcoming staff. Just cold pavement and locked glass doors. Confusion spread quickly. Small groups gathered near the entrance, whispering to each other. Phones appeared in hands as people began checking invitations and messages. A few guests tried pulling the door handles. Locked. By 9:30, more than 200 people stood outside the building. And that was when Margaret Hale arrived. Her black sedan rolled smoothly into the lot, stopping near the front entrance. She stepped out wearing a pearl-colored suit and a perfectly composed expression. For a moment she simply observed the crowd. Then the corner of her mouth lifted slightly. She walked toward the guests with calm, deliberate steps. Several relatives immediately approached her. "Margaret, what's going on?" one asked. "I'm afraid," she said gently, "there may have been some planning complications." Her tone carried quiet sympathy. Like a doctor delivering unfortunate news. Another guest frowned. "But the ceremony starts in 30 minutes. Margaret sighed softly. "Emily has always struggled with organization," she said carefully. A few people exchanged uncomfortable looks. Then someone asked the question she had been waiting for. "Do you think the wedding is cancelled?" Margaret lowered her eyes slightly, as if the thought caused her pain. "I warned her this might happen." Across the parking lot, Daniel and I watched everything unfold from inside a black SUV. The windows were tinted. No one could see us. Daniel exhaled slowly. "She really went all the way," he said. I watched my mother standing among the guests, offering small apologetic smiles. She needed everyone to believe it. Sophia sat in the front seat with a tablet in her lap. "Right on schedule," she said calmly. At exactly 9:45, the first bus arrived. It turned into the parking lot slowly, its polished black exterior reflecting the confused crowd. Guests stepped aside as the door opened. A man in a dark suit stepped out. He carried a clipboard. "Good morning," he called to the group. "Are you all here for the Carter Brooks wedding?" Several people nodded cautiously. "Yes," someone answered. "But the venue seems to be relocated," the man said smoothly. A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. "Relocated?" another guest asked. "Yes," he continued. "Due to unexpected scheduling conflicts, the ceremony has been moved to the primary venue." Margaret's smile froze. "Primary venue," she repeated. The man checked his clipboard. "Grand Aurora Hall." Silence spread across the parking lot. One guest pulled out a phone immediately. "Wait," she said, eyes widening. "The Grand Aurora Hall?" Several people recognized the name. It was one of the most exclusive event spaces in the entire city. Margaret's composure cracked for the first time. "That's impossible," she said sharply. But the coordinator only smiled politely. "Transportation has been arranged for all guests." Another bus turned into the lot behind the first. Then a third. The crowd quickly shifted from confusion to excitement. People began boarding the buses, chatting energetically. Within minutes the entire parking lot was moving again. Margaret stood frozen near the entrance. Her eyes scanned the area, searching for answers. And then she saw me. I stepped out of the SUV slowly. Daniel walked beside me. The sunlight caught the white fabric of my wedding dress as we crossed the pavement. My mother's face drained of color. "Emily," she said. "Hi, Mom." She looked around wildly. What is happening? I stopped a few feet away. The wedding, I said calmly. But the vendors, new ones. The venue, upgraded. Her voice sharpened. You can't afford that hall. Daniel laughed softly. That's the funny part. But I raised a hand gently. This wasn't Daniel. Her eyes snapped back to me. For the first time in her life, my mother truly looked at me. Not as the daughter she believed she understood, but as a stranger. You always assumed I was struggling, I said quietly. She said nothing. I never corrected you. Sophia stepped out of the SUV behind us. Margaret's gaze shifted between the three of us. You planned this, she whispered. Actually, Sophia replied, you did. Margaret frowned. What? You removed every vendor connected to the original wedding, Sophia explained calmly. So we built a better one. Daniel checked his watch. We should go, he said. The last bus door closed. Only one vehicle remained. Margaret's sedan. And our car. I met my mother's eyes one last time. You wanted the wedding to fail publicly, I said softly. She swallowed. But instead, I gestured toward the departing buses. Everyone is about to attend the most unforgettable wedding the city has seen. For once, Margaret Hale had no words. Daniel opened the car door for me. As we drove away, the empty parking lot disappeared behind us. 40 minutes later, the buses arrived at Grand Aurora Hall. The guests stepped inside to a breathtaking scene of golden light, towering flowers, and music filling the air. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. And when I walked down the aisle, not one person was thinking about failure. They were thinking about triumph. About resilience. About the quiet strength of someone who had been underestimated for far too long. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is not destruction. It is success so undeniable that the truth reveals itself without a single shout. And somewhere across the city, Margaret Hale finally understood the one mistake she had never imagined. She had spent her entire life underestimating her own daughter. If this story surprised you, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from and what moment shocked you the most. And if you enjoy stories about quiet strength and unexpected justice, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel Still Waters Payback for more powerful stories like this.